You saying that, Lola? Peace, peace. TR Matt, what's happening? Peace, peace, y'all. Peace. Peace, peace, grand rises, grand rises. What's happening, KB? Grand rises, fam. OG Tribe, grand risings, y'all. Like the live, share the live for me. K Real was good. K Real was good. Coolin'. Sosa Bread was happening. How many of y'all caught the live last night? How many of y'all caught the live last night? What's happening, or grand risings? Call it OG, cool. Grand risings, Dallas, peace. So we're gonna get started in just a second. Hope y'all don't mind if we do a morning recap from last night. I know a lot of people probably missed the live last night. So I hope y'all don't mind that we do a recap of last night. Because I know a lot of this information is fairly new, so it takes a little bit of minute, repetition to get it. But hopefully y'all starting to understand it. See, this Sephardic thing is getting less complicated. But now you're getting a grasp on it. Cool. Yeah, I want us to get a grasp on it, to understand it, you know what I'm saying? Because it plays a part in history. A lot of reasons why history don't make sense is because there's a lot of people that's left out of history, right? A lot of parts that they play is left out, right? That's why they work so hard to just be like, you guys are African slaves, Negroes, Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King. That's one reason why they do it like that, to cause the confusion. But once you start breaking down the colonial barriers of who's who, what's what happened, genealogy, and you just start putting it all together, a lot of it will start to make sense. You'll start to get a real understanding of colonial times, and pretty much understand your genealogy as well too. You know what I'm saying? But it was a whole reason why they took a lot of us and just lumped us up into one category, which, erases a lot of our history and accomplishments throughout the world when they do that. Shalom, peace. Locked in spiritual, was in it. said Sephardic plus Hispanic equals Latino. Nah, not necessarily. Not necessarily. Not so much as Hispanic, but Latin, right? Sephardics and Moors, who was conquered by Rome and Greece, right? So they got conquered by Rome and Greece around 1 AD, and because Sephardites and Moors were colonized by Rome, they start speaking Latin languages, because Rome and Latin goes hand to hand. So they start speaking Latin languages or whatever instead of Aramaic and Hebrew, right? Some people still spoke Hebrew. Some people mixed the Latin with the Hebrew, which kind of creates Spanish a little bit. But it's more so about Roman, Greek, Latin, plus Sephardic and Moors, which, kind of gets you the Latino classification, if that makes sense. What's that, OG? Peace. Mm-hmm. What's that, Nifalanius? Peace. Yeah, we're gonna dive more into it. I got some more. I had some more slides that we didn't go over yesterday of the breakdown. So we'll cover it here in a second. We're gonna let some more people get in here though. We're probably gonna get it about like 12, 13 people, and then we're gonna go ahead and just dive into the books. So I appreciate y'all for tapping the screen. Thank y'all for sharing the live. I also want to say thanks to those who donated to the Cash App. I really do appreciate the help, the support, the love. If y'all want to donate to the Cash App, feel free. You donate whatever your heart feels. That's how, I really do appreciate all the help, all the support, and everything like that. So, with that being said, anybody got any questions before we dive into it? Anything we need to clarify, clear up, or anything? What's that? It's sleep. Peace. Valanius in the building. Malik Shabazz, what's happening? Shout out to everybody that's in here. So then, you take, so from there, you take Sephardics and Moors and you mix them with indigenous people. This is where you start getting so-called Afro-Indigenous, right? Because that's what Afro-Indigenous really is, right? So-called Afro-Indigenous is a mixture of Sephardic Jews, Moors, and American Indians. Then you start getting into Afro-Indigeneity, right? Our mixed breed brothers and sisters, me. If you want to say me as an example, right? Ancestor Shadows. Also other ancestors is Moors, and also got Irish ancestors as well too. So I'm what you would consider so-called Afro-Indigenous, right? But we all say indigenous, but at the end of the day, that's what it is. Not because I'm African, but because my ancestors are Sephardic Moors who mix with American Indians, which creates so-called what they call Afro-Indigenous. Cajun Spice in the building, was in it. All right, so we got enough people. We're gonna go ahead and dive into it. So we were talking about Sephardics, Moors, and their history. Right, we're reading from these two books, Blackness in Latin America and the Caribbeans, and Beyond Red and Black, African and Native Relations. Okay. so far what we've been reading, we've been understanding the facts that Sephardic, Moors, and Indians lived in communities together, shared culture together, mixed and had babies together, and they both was on the Confederate side together, fighting against the people who hijacked the United States right now. Right, the people who hijacked the United States is the same people that we was fighting back then. Right, so we all was on the same side. All right, we all was on the same side, fighting the same people, and it still goes on today. We just don't know we doing it. All right. All right, y'all ready? Make sure y'all ready. Y'all let me know when y'all ready. I have a coworker claiming he's Moor, but I forgot the family names that connect them. You can see, you can ask him how is he a Moor. If you want to test anybody that say they a Moor, if they bring up Noble Drew Ali, Moor science temples, if they believe in Yakub and stuff like that, they're not real Moors. They heard some cool motherfucker on YouTube talk that Moor shit, and they just woke up one day and was like, I'm a Moor. So most people haven't did the genealogy to connect them to so-called Moors or Sephardics. Not saying that they not, but most of them haven't did the genealogical work to connect the ancestors. You know, most people just say they Moors or Israelites or whatever because, you know, they stumbled on YouTube channels. So now, you know, they calling themselves that. But you could just ask him what dynasty he come from. What's happening, Fox? Yeah. You could just ask him what dynasty he coming from. If he don't know what dynasty, then you might want to question that. All right. So in your colonial times, it was Sephardics, Moors, and Indians. All right. All right, Sephardic, Moors, Indians. Of course, with your small hat or Ashkenaz back there. So let's get into it. Without further ado, we got enough people in here. So let's go ahead and dive back into it. Let's go ahead and dive back into it, right? So, let's see where we're going to go with it. All right, here we go. Okay, cool. So diving back into it, right? We on page 51. Right, we on page 51. And it reads, it should be no surprise that the devil should be a powerful force, not only in syncrecy forms of African deities, for an example as Ogun and Shogun or Shangu, or Indigi or indigenous spirits and spirit masters, Arawakans or Ushia, Serpai, but also among the white and mestizo people. In fact, where blackness and indigenousness fuse in the Americas, whites seem to have attributed particularly powerful qualities to an active devil. In spite of centuries of genetic intermingling that has produced widely scattered populations of Black Indians. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, y'all see that? What is a Black Indian? What is a Black Indian? They said in spite of centuries of genetic intermingling that has produced widely scattered populations of Black Indians, or people often self-identifying as Zambo, or called Zambo by Black and Indigenous and sometimes Mestizo people. The pervasive social race polarity in Latin America, as we have seen, separates Black and Indigenous people as opposites at the bottom. Exactly. There you go. OG tribe. There you go. Sephardic mixed with Indigenous, right? Because you can also throw Moor in there, because Sephardic and Moors the same people. So when you say Sephardic, Moor, Sephardic, so you're exactly right. A Sephardic plus Indigenous gives you Black Indians, Zambos, Afro-Indigenous, all these terminologies, right? And they said centuries, right? Centuries is like 100 years, 100 plus years. What's that in Horace? All right, 100 plus years of intermingling. A 100 years of intermingling produce widely scattered populations of Black Indians. Okay. Flipping the page. Page 52. All Indians, including the Black Indians, right? Including the Black Indians, all Indians are conceptualized as descendant from native populations of the Americas. All Black populations are conceptualized as descendants of Africans, right? And we know these Africans are Latinos, Sephardic and Moors. From the beginning of colonial era to the present, whites and mestizos have viewed Blacks and Indigenous as dual fronts of evil. Listen to what they said. They said whites and mestizos. Right? Whites and mestizos have viewed Blacks and Indigenous as dual fronts of evil and as specialists in African and Indian witchcraft or sorcery. Right? African and Indian witchcraft and sorcery, right? Santeria, voodoo, hoodoo. Right? Santeria, voodoo, hoodoo. All right. Such negative attributes are often said to be the real sources, right? The real sources of physical illness and social unrest in the modern nations of the Americas. So-called Black, Indigenous, and Zambo populations have been targets for accusations of insurgents by politicians and bureaucrats. The nation states with radically different political persuasions and ideologies, okay, and the subjects of sustained Christian evangelism for nearly 500 years. The political similarities and metaphors used to characterize such people are usually those of negative animal features, treacherous like jaguars, black and red forest dweller monkeys, right? And the Christian devil. In Christian religion, the metaphors quickly became read, and all indigenous and Black manifestations of shamanism, right, numismatism, thought, portrayal, and ritual activity became stigmatized as devil worship. So they literally telling you that colonial times, like we already knew, is when they demonized your spiritual practices. It didn't matter if you was a Sephardic Jew, Moor, or an American Indian. Your spiritual practice was called devil worship. Right? It was called devil worship. That's what they called it. Because we know black is for Latinos, Sephardics, Moors, Indigenous Americans. Zambos is the children of both said Latinos and Indigenous. The Zambos is the children. Okay? So they targeted these three all the time. And they still targeted, still to this day. You're still targeted, still to this day. All right? Y'all good? Y'all straight? Any questions? Mic check 1 2 1 2. Can y'all hear me still? All right. Let's jump to page 200 real quick, right? Let's talk about so-called Africans and Indians, or should I say, let's talk about Sephardics, Moors, and Indians on page 22. All right. So black and Indians, right? Black and Indians sometimes found themselves allied in a mutual fight against Euro-American, right? Black and Indians sometimes found themselves allied in a mutual fight against Euro-Americans. Allied in a mutual fight against Euro-Americans. Sephardic Jews, Moors, and Indians. At other times, the divide and rule policies of whites pitted the two groups against each other, right? So sometimes we allied, fought together, communities together against Euro-American domination, boom. And other times, some of us was put against each other. The contact between blacks and Indians brought about by the expansion of the frontier also led to the ethnogenesis of new colonial tribes, right? New colonial tribes, such as the Mosquito Indians of Central America, or the Black Caribs, currently also in Central America, but with roots in Caribbean, right? So you got Caribs in Central America that you don't know about. And also the Black Seminoles, whose origins lie in the southeastern United States, primarily Florida. These groups differ from one another in the nature of relationships that existed between Sephardic Jews, Moors, and Indians, but all three have structural and functional similarities that can best be demonstrated through comparative studies. Okay? All right? So you have Seminoles and you got Black Seminoles. All right? What's happening, Day Dilla? Peace. Seminoles, of course, 100% copper colored tribe. Black Seminoles, the mixture of Sephardic Jews, Moors, and Seminoles. But we know that the name Seminole, we ain't about to go through the whole, Seminole, runaway, the Maroon communities is Sephardic Jews, Moors, Indians together creates a Maroon community. So, peep game. I need some better coffee. This coffee is horrible. All right. So now we kind of start to understand what a Black Indian is, right? So as we keep going, it said Maroons helped the Haitian Revolution happen, correct? Yeah, well, Maroons are everywhere. Maroons was in Haiti. Maroons was in Puerto Rico, Colombia, Suriname, Florida. Maroons is just Sephardic Jews, Moors, and Indians in one community fighting together. And, of course, you have kids out of this. So that's what a Maroon is. So Yes, there was Maroons in Haiti who did the Haitian Revolution because, you know, Haiti was one of the first places and main places that they sent Sephardics and Moors that got kicked out of the Iberian Peninsula and stuff like that in North Africa. So the first place they sent them was what? Hispaniola, which is today's Haiti. So Haiti would be the first Maroon, you know what I'm saying? Creole or whatever. All right. So turn to the page. So during the period of British control of Florida in 1763 to 1783, right, and especially during the American Revolution, Sephardics and Moors became an important element among the Creek and Seminole. Y'all heard that? Sephardics and Moors, you know, they call them black, but I'm filling it in myself so y'all can understand it better. Sephardics and Moors became an important element among the Creek and Seminole. It goes back to the flag, right? Goes back to the flag I showed y'all. They said Sephardics and Moors became an important element in the Creek and Seminole. And when you look at the Creek Confederate flag, you have the symbol. Right? When you look at the Creek Confederate flag, it makes sense. You be like, oh shit, hold on, Los. What's happening, Magnificent Peace? District Soldier. Max Jones, what's happening? Right? They said Moors and Sephardics was an important element in the Creek and Seminole nations. Confederate flag proves it. All right. Let's get back into it. So they became an important element among the Creek and Seminoles. Oseo, right? The British agents, right? The British agents rewarded Creeks who served in the revolution with slaves. Listen, other Sephardics and Moors were captured by the Indians through raids on plantations or joined the British and their allies on promises of freedom. With the departure of the British and the secession of the Florida back to Spain in 1783, slaves fleeing from South Carolina and Georgia plantations began to take refuge among the Seminoles. Okay? What's that in Gus? Peace. What's that in Mixum? Right? With the departure of British, Florida went back to Spain. And because of that, a lot of Sephardics and Moors were fleeing from South Carolina and Georgia to take refuge among the Seminoles in Florida. Right? Because we already had family already part of the Seminoles, right? Right? They said South Carolina and Georgia, Sephardics and Moors took refuge with the Seminoles in Florida. There's another Confederate flag of South Carolina. All right. So the British immediately began to make plans to colonize St. Vincent and to sell land to British colonists. Sephardics and Moors and Indians' resistance to incursions into their territories led the British to consider a plan whereby the Caribs, both Sephardic and Indian, but they're going to call them black and red, right? Of course, they're going to give them the color descriptions, right? Black and red, but we know black means Ladino, red means copper-colored Indian. So both Ladino and American Indian will be shipped off to the nearby island of Betclia, or be granted areas of their own, choosing within specified regions of St. Vincent. They were to be compensated for their lands and given 5 years to relocate. Both Ladinos and the island Caribs reject this offer, and conflicts with the settlers continued. In 1772, the British devastated a military and naval plan to force the Caribs into signing a treaty similar to the one signed in Jamin Maroons, signed with the Jamin Maroons in 1739. News of this plan leaked out, and settlers and Caribs alike became convened that military forces were converging on the island to exterminate the Carib population. The Sephardics and Moors and Indians resolved to stand their ground, and the result was a full-scale Indian war. Full-scale Indian war. Listen, they said Sephardics, Moors, and Indians together going against colonial powers is called an Indian war. Now you know what the Indian wars are and who was in them. So the story of Africans blending in with the indigenous was the Sephardics? Yeah, OG tried. Because remember, in colonial times, there was no continent called Africa. So everybody on that continent was in Africans, right? That continent was called Libya at this time of colonial times. That continent was called Libya, and Africa was a Roman province, which was in the northern part of Libya, which is the northern part of that continent, which is Mauritania, Morocco, Algiers, Tunisia, all the way over to Egypt, Somaliland, Ethiopia, and then it goes up to the Iberian Peninsula, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Sicily, Rome, Greece. All of that was considered Africa. So when they talk about Africans and African slaves, they're talking about people of that province right there. And the only people that's part of that province was Sephardic Jews and Moors. So the whole time they have people thinking that they was grabbing some random Africans from the coast of Africa and all of that type of shit, but they was grabbing specific people. All right, Sephardic Jews, Moors, and Indians. It's the only people that they wanted. The natives always bring this up. I knew they weren't Africa. Thank you for putting it together. Yeah. So technically in this time, there's really not there's so Sephardics and Moors would have never called themselves Africans. African was a label that was placed on them when Rome colonized them. Right, because the word Africa is a Roman Greek word anyways. So when Rome conquered the Sephardic Sephardites, who biblically we call Hebrews or Israelites, when they conquered them with the Moors, they just called them African or Africa, meaning that they were property of this specific Roman tribe, right? So in reality, they wasn't Africans, they was Iberians, falsely called Africans in history to hide the fact that these is the real Hebrews, the real Jews. That's why everybody got in a frenzy when, black Americans start saying that they was Jews. Anti-Semitic. You guys stealing culture. Oh God, you guys are everything. Niggas start doing all that shit. But they only do that because they know the truth. And they really trying to stop you from understanding the truth and the truth from getting out to other people, because a lot of other people don't know this. Right? So that's why they do all that reverse psychology, trying to debunk you and shit. So facts. So the whole time when they talk about Indian wars, you are talking about American Indians, Sephardics and Moors fighting together against Catholics, Jesuits, Christians, Vaticans, little hat people. That's what the whole thing is. What's that in, Coco? That's what the whole thing is. That's what it always been. It's still like that today. We still going against the same people that we was going against the 1700s. Because this is the time where the little hat Z Nation people is trying to take over America. Right? When you get to the late 1900s, then you start seeing, Rothschild, Rockefeller, J.P. Morgans, the Peabodys, and all of these people start to slowly gain control over America, right? Government systems, education systems, medicine, agriculture, land, etc., etc. We were still being colonized. They made you think that colonial time is way back then and nobody's doing that no more, but they still doing colonies today. Anywhere a military from another place go to another place and set up base, that's colonization. Come on. And with colonization comes slavery. We still in those times. You just forgot. That's it. We still in those times. You just forgot because they made slavery comfortable. Now you're comfortable with going and being a slave. What do I mean by being a slave? You work all day, right? Because remember, you don't own nothing. Not even the money that you're working for, right? Your job is loaning it to you, right? Understand the economic side of slavery. It'll help you understand what slavery really is. You work all day to get paid, to give the money right back to the same corporations and companies that just paid you. So therefore, in reality, you working for free. They just made working for free look different. That's all they did. Right? That's why they call it fields of work. What is your field of work? Field. What is your field of slavery? Oh, well, shit, I'm a truck driver. What's your field of slavery? Oh, I'm a registered nurse. What's your field of slavery? Fast food. It's all some sort of labor. That's why they call it field of work. This is why slavery, the synonym for slavery is also employment. The synonym for employment, it means is slavery. When you do the etymology of family, it means servant. Right? As I'm reading these stories to you about colonial times and plantations and Indian wars, you ain't hear now one time of black people being whipped. Because it ain't what you, it ain't what they thinking. When they say Indian revolts, that's no different than you going on strike. Going on strike, boycott, strike, except it was a little bit more intense back then. Now it's just peaceful, right? They made you be peaceful with your revolts because they scared of the other side of the revolt. So they made you docile and peaceful with your revolt. But back then, when you revolted and went on strike, yeah, man, the whole colony felt it. Peep game. Peep game. This is a family thing. Because at this time, when we talk about Sephardics, Moors, and Indians, 1700, shit, Sephardics, Moors, and Indians been living with each other inside communities, having relations with each other since 1400s. We in 1700s going into the 1800s. This is some family shit now. Niggas is family at this point. We've been living together, reproducing together, and fusing our culture together and all of this other type of stuff, you feel me, for 300 years. So this is why Sephardics and Moors felt comfortable with going to Florida and joining the Seminoles. That's why they felt comfortable going with the Creek, because they probably already had cousins and family inside of these nations and tribes already. You know what I'm saying? So in hindsight, it's not dirty Moors enslaving Indians. It has never been that. It's been little hat people, the Vatican, Christianity, and Catholic. The same shit you see today. You know, the same corporations and companies and same people. So that whole narrative of it was the dirty Moors who did this to us, that is a false narrative to keep melanated people to keep fighting amongst each other. Anytime they try to put you, anytime a narrative is created that puts you against you, understand that that's a psyop. Sephardics, Moors, and Indians always got along. We always lived in communities. And we always went against the same people, which is the people that people are waking up and seeing today. They wasn't called Z Nation back then though. Right? The whole Z Nation shit, that shit's new. They wasn't called that back then. Back then, they was just called Christians, Catholics. You know, small hat Chazars at that point. You know, Anglo-Saxons. All right, let's flip the page though. Shout out to everybody that's in here, man. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. So it resulted in a full-scale Indian war. Right, a full-scale Indian war. Right, so in references, was that in OGJD? I don't know if I spoke. In references to Sephardics and Moors among Seminoles began in 1812 with the failed attempt of Georgia patriots to seize control of Florida. The intervention of free Maroon settlements and Sephardics and Moors living among the Indians prevented the fall of St. Augustine. In 1813 and 14, Andrew Jackson and his forces entered Alabama to put down an uprising by the anti-American Red Stick Creek. Okay. After a number of military victories against Jackson, the Red Sticks and their Sephardic and Moor allies were finally forced to flee into northern Florida. Right? Into northern Florida. Promises of free land in the West Indies and protection from return to their masters attracted fugitive slaves to Florida, where British agents, with the acquiescence of the Spanish, sought to recruit an army of fugitive Indians and runaway slaves. Many of these Sephardics and Moors and Indians were established at the fort built by British at Prospect Bluff at the mouth of Appalachia or Apalachicola River in the Florida Panhandle. American slave owners among the Florida borders were very uneasy over this Negro fort, and in 1816 it was destroyed by 2 American gunboats, or Britain's gunboats dispatched from New Orleans. Sephardics, Moors, and Seminoles. Sephardic, Moors, and Seminole towns then mobilized for the First Seminole War. That's where you get the First Seminole War. The First Seminole War. Sephardics, Sephardites, Moors, Mauritanians, and American Indians of different nations coming together to fight off. Y'all know who they fighting off. Y'all know who they fighting off. Anybody got any questions while we let it breathe for a second? Anybody, any questions while we let it breathe? So that is the real Trail of Tears. You could say that. You could say that. You said, what time frame is this? This is between early 1700s till late 1775, 76s. Around the time the First Seminole War popped off. It was like 1816s. It was around the time frames. Right? So now you start to understand black codes. Said we had a chief named Mulatto King too. Yep. And remember what mulatto mean. Mulatto didn't necessarily mean mixed all the time. It just meant that you was just light-skinned. Like you could be a light-skinned Indian, be called mulatto, or you was a light-skinned Sephardic or Moor, they still called you mulatto. So in most cases, mulatto never really meant mixed. It just meant light-skinned. In other cases, you know, they did use mix. You know what I'm saying? So then they pushed my family from Florida to Oklahoma and told us it was free land. Yeah, so when it came to the Trail of Tears, they kind of coerced us to move to Oklahoma, right? They kind of coerced us. Like, they told us that they was going to give us land, jobs, and everything like that, and better opportunity of freedom. So not all, but some of our people fell for the okie doke. And they went out there, and shit was even worse out there than it was over here, honestly. Because when you go out towards the west, now you're not just dealing with little hat people, Catholics, and Christians. You know what I'm saying? Now you start dealing with Russians. It's pretty much the same people, but they just on the west coast of things, right? You start dealing with Russians, Poland, Siberians, Chinese, you know, the Japanese. You know, you start dealing with a whole other type of colonial thing that's going on in America. Because while we was getting colonized on the East Coast by predominantly European type of folk. The West Coast was getting colonized by like Asian communities. And when I say Asian, I'm not just talking about Bruce Lee, because people forget that Russia is Asia, technically. You know, they'll call it Europe and all that, but Eurasia was a thing at this time, right? So out west was more of a, you know, Siberian, Russian, Poland, Chinese, a little bit of Dutch. Let's see who else was out there. A small Sweden, you know, a small little colony of Sweden, and it wasn't too big to make a noise, but you know, they was out there. You know, so you enter a whole different realm of slavery or colonization out that way. What's that in Lilith? Peace. What's that in Robert? So yeah, so they coerced our people to move to Oklahoma with false promises. Yeah. So now the black code starts to make sense, right? Because now you know who the Sephardites or the Sephardic Jews are, and you start to understand the Maroon communities of all of us. Now you start to understand the black codes, because the black codes is for Sephardics themselves. But they was for Sephardics themselves, right? And these Sephardics are called Latinos. Latinos are El Negros. They are also called black people, or Africans. So now when you do the main research and be like, okay, well damn, black codes are African Americans. Okay, I remember this book, Los, breaking down what a so-called African American is. Oh shit. Yeah, it started to make sense when the black codes start being, you know what I'm saying? And the black codes also included labor contracts. Many states required black people, right? But we know who these black people are, right? Okay. Many states required black people to sign yearly labor contracts. And if they refuse, they could be arrested, fined, or forced into unpaid labor. So that's indentured servitude with a remix to it. We're going to give you an indentured servant contracts, but you got to re-sign with us yearly. It's like a 360 deal. You know what I'm saying? Now, real talk. It's just like a 360 deal with the rappers. You can't sign no other contracts but us. You can't wear no other sneaker unless it's Nike, or you will be fined. You know what I'm saying? It's the same shit. They still do it. They still do it in our faces. The black codes is still inactive. They ain't never deactivate black codes. For real, they never deactivated black codes, y'all. It's still inactive right now. For real, it's still active right now. This is why you get paid different than your YT coworker. I promise you, you do. You get paid lower than the YT person that's right next to you doing the same job. Your housing and mortgage and rent is different from other YT people. Everything, because these black codes are still active. Okay. So the black codes was laws, and when I read this, I'm gonna fill it in with the Sephardic because it makes sense, right? So the black codes, or Code Nayor, were laws passed in the southern states. Why was they in the southern states? We just got done reading that it was heavily populated with Sephardic Jews and Indians, right? So they was passed in the southern United States after the Civil War to limit the rights of African Americans, right? Descendants of Sephardic Jews and Indians, you know, Afro-Indigenous, right? To limit the rights of Sephardic Jews and their descendants, and keep YT supremacy in place, meaning church in place. These laws were designed to ensure that Sephardics would be available as a cheap labor force and to continue to work on plantations. Virgincy laws. Black codes made viragancy a crime and targeted unemployed Sephardics or black people or Moors. Apprentice laws. Black codes made black orphans or Latino orphans and dependents available for hire to white people, often without compensation. Slavery. That orphan train isn't just about YT people. I keep saying it. I'm gonna keep on telling you this. When y'all gotta dig deeper in history and stop looking at the surface of what they give you, the surface story is a decoy. Orphan trains wasn't about white folks. It was about us. They just used white faces for the story. But when you learn about the colored orphan asylums, when you learn about the colored orphan institutes, when you really understand what Indian boarding schools was, schools for orphan children or half orphan children. All right, peep game. All right. So, let's stroll through the chat GPT for a second. All right. Let's stroll through the chat GPT for a second. Let me reiterate this. Peace, what's happening? Let me start with this one. Let me reiterate this. Because when they say black people, what's happening, Cosmic? Cosmic Paradox in the building, y'all. So when they say black people, we have to understand that black is a social construct. Okay, we have to understand that black is a social construct because it is used to erase your actual identity that matters. Right? So black is a social construct. Black is a colonial label, not a real ethnic identity. Europeans created black and white in the 15th and 17th century as part of a racial caste system in the Americas. Before that, people identified by nation, faith, or culture. Right? For an example, Moor, Jew, Berber, Arab, Mandinka, Yoruba, Shada, Mississippian, etc. My grandmama still identify as a Mississippian. For real. Call her right now. Hey, grandma, what are you? She'll be like, what do you mean? Like, what are we? Like, we Indians, but like, what are we? She'll be like, baby, we Mississippians. Oh, for real? She'll be like, yeah, we Mississippians. My grandma still identify like that. Like, she really don't know what this black shit is. I have to explain it to her all the time. She don't know. She grew up in an area where you still identify as a nation or your culture. She Mississippian. You Mississippian. I'm Mississippian. They don't want you to be called a Mississippian or an American. They want you to be black. And this is why. So when colonizers start mass slavery and deposition, they collapsed all those diverse identities into one category called black. Erasing history and nationhood. Nationhood. Reparations is for nations. What's that in King Wash? Vegan Strawman. Everybody talk about reparations. Reparations is for nations, not social constructs. Social constructs don't exist. That's one reason why you ain't getting no reparations. For real, that's one reason why you ain't getting no reparations, and you kind of ain't gonna get too much of nothing done, because you're not going by your nation. Most Black Americans don't know their nation. That's why they tell you, you don't know who you are. I do know who I am, bro. I know my ancestors. No, you don't know your nation. So because you don't know your nation, you don't know who you are. All right. So first, they created a social construct, Black/Negro. Secondly, Latinos, who are Moors and Sephardic Jews, right? Historically, yes, Latino often meant people from the Iberian Peninsula, Spain, Portugal, who were culturally Latinized, right, enslaved by Rome. Many Latinos were Sephardic Jews and Moors, both of whom who have African roots. But there is no Africa at this time, so dodge that hijack. And deep ties across the Mediterranean world. After the fall of Granada in 1492, Spain expelled Jews and Muslims. Some converted under pressure, became conversos or moriscos, and many were shipped into the Americas under the broad label Latino. So Latino doesn't just mean African slave who spoke Spanish. In a deeper sense, it refers to the Afro-Asiatic peoples of Iberia, who already had a long history before Europeans created Black. Y'all okay? Y'all get it? But like I said before, what's that in Courtney? But like we reiterated, they can't be called Africans because Africa wasn't a continent then. Right? Right? They said that Sephardics and Moors who had ancestral roots in Africa. But that's impossible because Africa wasn't a continent then. So what they talking about when they say Africa in colonial times and in history? They don't mean what we think about it today. You can't read history books from the 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9. You can't read history books from those time frames with the 2025 mindset. You're going to confuse yourself. And that's what part of the confusion is. So we have to understand in colonial times, there was no continent called Africa. That continent was called Libya at this time. Some people say Ethiopia. Some say Libya. But right now I'm going to say Libya because in most maps you're going to find it being called Libya in colonial times. So that continent was called Libya. Africa was a country. It was a Roman province inside of Libya, which is that continent. So the term Africa in antiquity only applied to a Roman province in what's now Tunisia in northern Libya, northern Africa. Right? The modern usage of quote-unquote Africa as a whole continent is late in the game. Greeks and Romans didn't call West, Central, or Southern regions Africa. Right? Many Iberian Moors, Berbers, and Sephardic Jews, Israelites, Hebrews, wouldn't have called themselves Africans at all. That's because they go by their kingdom, clan, faith, no different than the American Indians. Colonial powers later retroactively labeled all of these people, the Iberian Moors, Berbers, and Sephardism, they retroactively label all of them as African to strip away that complexity. So In colonial times, when you talk about African slave trade, African diaspora, African, you are talking about literally Iberian Moors, Berbers, and Sephardic Jews only when you say African. Because they tell you right there, colonial powers, which means we are in colonial time, later retroactively labeled all of them African to strip away that complexity. So when you read the stories about Africans and African slave trades and African diasporas and African, you're talking about literally Iberian Moors, Berbers, and Sephardism. Now you understand why modern Africans of today want to tether on to you, Black Americans, because you come from, put it together, man. Now you understand why modern Africans want to tether on to you. They want to tether on to the story like the slaves came from some random coast in Gambia. You got Europe or Antigua. Yeah. Nah, nigga, y'all trying to tether on because y'all ain't got no African story either, nigga. Y'all trying to tether on because of who our ancestors are. Iberian Moors, Berbers, and Sephardites, especially that Sephardi, when you know biblically Sephardic Jews are the Hebrews and Israelites inside your biblical text. They definitely want to tether on because of that. I'm keeping it real with you. Exactly, and most Africans is Christians. That's another dead giveaway because this whole colonial time, what have we been learning? It's been Christians, Catholics, Vatican, little hat people against Sephardics, Moors, Indians. I guaranteed you most of the Africans that don't like you are Christians. And I guarantee the next time your panel get invaded by an African, ask them, are you Christian? Most times they're gonna say yes. You got your answer right there. All right. I know somebody said that they was gonna get a screenshot. Y'all got y'all screenshot? That's why I be telling people, Moors and Jews ain't African. That so-called African slave trade is an Iberian slave trade disguised under colloquialism. Ain't no such thing as an African diaspora. I mean, since now we know what the word African mean in this time, that African diaspora is actually a Sephardic Jew and Moor diaspora. Why you think you still tie your hair up? Very Sephardic like. Why you think you like turbans and do-rags and shit like that? Very Moorish of you. Why you think you feel so comfortable in Nike slides and baggy sweatpants and shit? Because that's how Moors used to dress. Baggy pants. Some of them had them damn parachute MC Hammer pants with some damn slippers. You know what I'm saying? With some gold loops in their ears, gold necklaces and shit. Some of them had grills. Come on, looking like a very pirate around this bitch. You still do the same shit. When you break down your culture that you do or that we do, you do a mixture of Indian, Sephardic, and Moor. That is what our culture is, literally. Most modern Africans hate locks. They definitely hate locks. Locks is for priests. Most priests wear locks. It stood for priestliness. They hate that stuff because that's not their culture. That's ours. Said the hammer pants too comfortable. Nah, for real. Big game. So they wouldn't even call themselves Africans back then. That's some shit that Rome called them. So now, the Roman Greek colonial route, right? You gotta go all the way back to when Rome and Greek colonized that landmass and areas and stuff, right? Because people totally ignore Roman and Greek history when they talk about slave trades and colonial times. I don't know where their timeline started, but colonial time began 1 AD with the Greeks and the Romans. You know what I'm saying? So we talking about colonial period, and we got to go all the way back to the beginning of colonial period so you can understand it. Who is these mysterious Africans? These mysterious Africans. So after the little hat people and the Chazars and the Anglo-Saxons conquered what you call Rome today, right? After they conquered, infiltrated, and put themselves in the seat of the Roman seats and infiltrated the Vatican Church, when they came down with the Anglo-Saxon conquest, right? And then you get into the Roman conquest of 1 AD, okay? So Roman and Greek colonial roots. From about 1 AD to 700 AD, Rome and Byzantine control, plus later Greek Latin scholarship, helped fix the term Africa to Moors and others in the north. This is the beginning when the word African will start being placed on places and people. From Roman and Byzantine control and later Greek and Latin scholarship helped fix the term Africa to Moors and others in the north of Libya. Okay? When Arabs, Berbers, and Moors dominated Iberia from 711 to 1492, Europeans already had, hold on, UPS truck. UPS truck coming through. All right. So when the Arabs, Berbers, and Moors dominated the Iberia in 711 to 1492, peep the timelines, keep up. We ain't talking about no random so-called Africans. We're still talking about specific people, as you see. As they dominated the Iberian Peninsula for 711 to 1492, Europeans, meaning Anglo-Saxons, little hat people, Germanic folks, Europeans had already had that racialized memory of Africani Morti, right? Meaning Moors or Africans, Moors, Africans, right? They already still had that memory that shit, we used to call Moors and Berbers and Sephardics Africans back when they was colonized by Rome from 1 AD to 700 AD. That's 600 years, right? So it's stick in their mind. So they was just calling them Africans and Moors, Negroes, all the same people. Berbers, Sephardics, Arabs, okay? Original Arabs. He says, so who are those people working in the 7-Eleven? Those people are Turks. The people that you see today who are Arabs aren't really Arabs. Those people are like Turks, little hat people, Armenians, Caucasians, you know what I'm saying? That's who those people are. Some of them are mixed with our people, but most of them are actually Turks, Caucasians and shit. Yeah, they just, so all they do the same thing, right? The little hat people, the Amish, the Mormons, what you mistakenly call an Arab today, they are all genetically the same people, right? They all come from the Chazar lineage, right? They all come from the Chazar lineage, the Gog Magog lineage. You know what I'm saying? And they conquered. When they come and conquer, they assume the identity of the people that they conquered, and they kick the people out of the land. You know, and that's what they did. So when they came out of the Dramatic Mountains of Caucasia and all of that area, right, they start conquering over. They made it to the Britain Isles in what we call Breton, or Brittany is what it was called, you know, Brittany or Breton. They conquered, kicked those people out, and they became British, right? They went through Rome, Greek and Greece, you know, conquered, did what they did. They kicked out the original Romes, and now they became the Romans, right? Plus they always roaming because they nomadic people. So they became the Romans, you know, and they infiltrated the Vatican Church and all of that type of stuff right there too. And it's the same thing. You know, they conquered in Ireland, they became Irish. You know what I'm saying? They conquered the Scots and became Scottish. They conquered the Jews and became Jewish. You know what I'm saying? Same people. Same people. We've been fighting the same people this whole time. But these people are originally Germanic people from Germany, you know, from Russia, Poland, Siberia, the Turks, Caucasus Mountains, Armenians, Georgians, and stuff like that. If that makes sense. I ain't trying to overly explain it. So when the Iberian Jews and Moors were expelled or enslaved, colonial documents often called them Africans. What does often mean? Anybody who ain't really at work or doing no work, what does the word often mean? Because I'm only asking because, you know, we have a lot of people who try to debunk us and stuff like that, and they not well versed in vocabulary or context clues. So what does often mean? If you oftenly do something, right? I play basketball and I oftenly dribble with my left hand. Frequently, right? Okay. All right. Frequently. Or repeatedly. Okay. On the regular. Okay. More times than not. All right. So when the Iberian Jews and Moors were expelled 1492 and enslaved 1492, colonial documents often called them African or Negro, even though that wasn't their identity. So when you talk about African slave trade, you're literally talking about the slave trade of Iberian Jews and Moors, falsely called African and Negro because that wasn't their identity. That's not your identity. That's not my identity. Right? This is how you read between the lines. So technically, right? So technically, Latinos are Moors and Sephardic Jews who were forced into Catholic or Latin identity by Rome in 1 AD to 700 AD. Okay, they became Latinized, right? Then from that, they became Black and African in colonial mislabel applied after Rome in Spain reshaped geography and identity. So this means the people erased under Black are in fact the descendants of Moors, Jews, and indigenous nations with their own sovereignty. Which means the people erased under Black, now when you talk about Black people, the people erased under Black are in fact the descendants of Moors, Jews, Hebrews, right? And indigenous nations with their own sovereignty. Come on, man. It ain't far-fetched. Okay? Y'all good, y'all straight, y'all enjoying the live. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. Right? So, man, now you know who the African is in the story. Now you know who the African is in the story. Now you can dodge all the hijacks in the world, right? When you talk about Afro-Indigenous people, you're talking about indigenous people who are mixed with Sephardic and Moor. And the culture shows it. Let me show y'all something. Our culture shows it all day long. Deep game. Let me show you something. Right? When you go to the islands, and not just the islands, there's places here in America that does it too. You know, when you talk about certain Creole culture. But when you go to the islands, they still honor their Sephardic Jews ancestors. They still honor they Sephardic ancestors. But they falsely call this African culture, right? Because we just read the whole African, right? How they was relabeled as African. They falsely call this African. Oh, this is African culture. No, it's not. This is Sephardic. This is Iberian. This is what you would wear if you was in Spain back then. What's that in hidden hands? A lot of our sisters still wrap their hair ups like that. Some of y'all watching it live with your hair wrapped up now like this. Some of y'all went to sleep last night with your hair wrapped up like this. Tell me I'm lying. You still do your culture. You just don't recognize it anymore. Mm. You still do your culture. Right? Peak game. You know, genealogy is important. The lady on the pancake mix. That's a Sephardic. Right in your face. Right in your face. That's Sephardic. That's Iberian attire. Yeah, the lady on the pan ain't Jemima. And you want to know something funny about her name, Jemima? Jemima is actually a Hebrew word. Oh yeah, that's a little side gem for y'all. You know, in your off time, go type in "Ain't Jemima" or Jemima Hebrew. That's gonna open up a whole another rabbit hole for you. Yeah, we still do our culture today, man. Appreciate that. Thank you for that. Thank you for that gift, man. Appreciate it. But ancestry is important. Genealogy is important. Understanding what you're reading is important. That's why I ain't got no problem putting my genealogy up. Shit, niggas already pretending to be us anyway. But when you have an ancestor who is a Moor, right? Listen to the history that we just read. We read that a lot of South Carolina Sephardic Jews and Moors left South Carolina and went to Florida and linked up with the Seminoles. My ancestor, who is a Moor, is from South Carolina. And my little bit of Seminole Yamasee blood that I have comes from that, because he left South Carolina, he went to Florida, boom. But I also have a Mississippian Shada ancestor. And through my Mississippian Shada, that's why, I get a little Irish and, you know what I'm saying? So, woo woo. But, you got Mississippian Shada. Grandmama. My grandfather that just passed away, he was the Moor. This is his Moorish ancestry. Right? William Bey came from Turkey. From Turkey, ended up in South Carolina. From South Carolina, he ended up in Florida. And I got family in Florida from that side. Now do your genealogy. They'll tell you. They tell you. And then for people that tell you that the Moors and Negroes, they are not the same people. Moor and Negro are synonymous, as you can see on the census record. It's synonymous, just like we learned. Moor and Negro is interchangeable. My ancestor was a Sephardic, Sephardi, because Sephardics was also referred to as Moors, because it's a descriptive term. Okay? Come on, man. I understand it. We just read that. Moors and Indians together fighting. We read it. Right? We just read it. Moors and Indians fighting together. There's no such thing as dirty Moors like people think it is. Those people who you calling dirty Moors aren't dirty Moors. They are black Chazars. Because black Chazars do exist. And they hide well because you ain't never heard of them. Grand Risings. What's that in trip? All right. So let's keep deep diving. Let's see where we left off with. He said Obama, yeah, black Chazar. For real. His mama is Jewish. Peace. So why the word Ladino? Why did they pick the word Ladino to call them this? Well, Ladino and Latino is one and the same. So when we talk about Ladinos, you're talking about the original Latinos, okay, who are Sephardic Jews and Moors, right? Because now we understand the classifications, because even they got reclassified. So the word Ladino comes from Latinus, right? Latinus speaking, or Ladino. In Roman times, it just meant someone who spoke Latin or was Latinized or assimilated into Roman culture. So when they tell you that these Sephardic Jews and Moors are Ladinos, that just means that these was the Sephardic Jews who were conquered by Roman when they did when they was conquering Jerusalem and Judea and all of that type of stuff, right? They conquered the Sephardic Jews of Judah, Jerusalem, right? Assimilated them into Roman culture, right? So now they call them Ladinos, but these are Sephardic Jews. Again, Rome applied Africa only to their province, which is so-called North Africa that we call today, which is modern Tunisia and parts of Algeria and Libya. Okay. Already, Moors and Berbers from this region were tied to Latin culture through trade, war, and governance. Right? Moors and Berbers, Sephardic Jews. Okay. So the Iberian usage, right? The Visigoths and Moors in Spain and Portugal, 400s to 1400s. So after Rome fell, the Visigoths and later the Moorish dynasties ruled Iberia. Ladino became a way of saying someone who speaks Romance or Rome or Latin-based languages, right? French, Spanish, etc., right? Sephardic Jews and Moors in Iberia were bilingual, right? Speaking Hebrew and Arabic. Speaking Hebrew and Arabic. Speaking Hebrew. Why would these Sephardic Jews be speaking Hebrew? Not Yiddish. Nah, we don't speak Yiddish. Yiddish is for them other people. We speak Hebrew. Sephardic Jews spoke Hebrew, not Yiddish. Moors spoke Arabic. And they also spoke Castilian and Portuguese, right? So the Jews who fled Spain after 1492 still speak Ladino or Judeo-Spanish today. Proof the term was originally tied to Sephardic Jews and not quote-unquote black slaves. Judeo. I don't know if we got a few of those words inside our Ebonics and our Creole languages. We definitely do. What's happening, Sip? Slip? Oh yeah, we definitely do. In our Creole languages, there's a lot of Judeo-Spanish in it, and there's a lot of Hebrew words in it. Inside of our Ebonics that we speak, or so-called AAVE that they say, right? AAVE, quote-unquote. Listen, what Ebonics really is. No, y'all not hearing me. Y'all not hearing me. So-called African-American vernacular English. We know what the African-American is now when we broke it all the way down. We understand Ebonics. We understand our grandmama and great-grandmama dialects of how they talk and spoke to us. A lot of us still have the dialect that we still carry because it's deep in the South. You still speak your language. You still got your dialect. You still got your Hebrew dialect. Why you think it's so easy for some of our brothers and sisters to pick up on Spanish? It's so easy. Why you think it's so easy for some of y'all to pick up on Arabic languages? Why you think it's so easy for some of y'all to understand Hebrew? Why you think it's easy for some of y'all to pick back up on your indigenous tongue? Why you think it's so easy for people like me who love speaking Ebonics fluently? Because I'm comfortable with it. Because Ebonics is Ebonics Creole, it's all a combination of American Indian words, Sephardic Jew, and Moorish words. When you see the Solani people get on this app and they speak in Tutanese, Tutanese is literally Tutanese literally has derivatives of Hebrew and Arabic in it, with an indigenous undertone to it when you listen to it and understand it and research the words that they be speaking. So yeah, we still speak our language today. They said black Americans speak the same way that our ancestors have always spoke since colonial days. We still got our colonial accent. And I just broke down to you who our ancestors was in colonial days. So what does that say about your accent? Come on, man. Let it marinate. Literally telling you in plain sight, yeah. So in other words, Latinos meant Moors and Jews who were Latinized or colonized by Rome, not Africans from the interior continent, right? So they didn't mean Africans from the interior continent when they say Latinos. And why am I putting emphasis on Latinos? Because most of your conquistadors, who they was like, those conquistadors was Africans. They're not talking about Africans from the interior continent. Those conquistadors was conversos who converted over to Christianity and Catholicism and now fighting for the church. That's who they are. They still Moors and Jews, but they Moors and Jews that's fighting for the church. So I guess if you want to call those sellouts and dirty Moors, then cool. But those are foot soldiers. Those ain't people who pulling the string. All right. But understand that part. All right. So let's keep it going. In colonial times, they was never talking about random Africans. Peace, what's happening? For real, in colonial times, they was never talking about no random Africans. Not how they be trying to tell you. They was talking about specific people. Because in colonial times, we just broke it down. The only people who was called Africans was Moors and Jews, who was Latinized by Rome or colonized by Rome, who called them Africans in the first place. So the colonial of Americas, 1500s to 1700s, Spanish colonizers brought two groups of Africans. All right, remember what Africans is. They brought two groups of Africans to the New Worlds. Bozeles, meaning new arrivals from West Central Africa. Remember what Africa is at this time. West Central Africa, right? Northern part of the continent. Who didn't speak Spanish or Portuguese yet. Right, so they fresh from the community, snatched them up. Boom. Latinos are African or Moors, Sephardism, who already spoke Spanish and Portuguese, and some who were already Christianized. Okay, so they brought two groups of the same people, right? One group haven't been colonized yet, right? Purely, strictly his culture, boom, grabbed him, brought him over here, right? He don't even know how to speak Portuguese or Latin yet. Boom, boom, boom. Latinos are the descendants of the people who've been fucking with the whole Rome shit for the longest. You know what I'm saying? Who've been colonized already. You know what I'm saying? So it's two groups of the same people. Just one has already been colonized for fucking centuries and they used to this shit. The other ones is fresh. Boom. Okay. So this is where the confusion comes in at. Over time, all acculturated Africans in the Americas were called Latinos, even if they weren't Iberian Jews or Moors. Meaning, when the 1800s start happening. All right, so listen closely. When the 1800s start happening with Ellis Island, and when Ellis Island start happening, and now you start getting like random Africans, right? So-called, Africans at this time, right? You Igbo, Yorubas, you fucking Nigerians, you start getting like random Africans at this point. They start coming into the Americas, the Caribbeans and the Americas. They also started getting grouped up under our identities, which is the whole beginning of the tethering thing. So now it makes it hard for people to separate who's who. So this is why we be like, bro, we ain't y'all, and y'all ain't us. And they know too. They know by looking at our culture that we ain't them and they ain't us. But there's benefits to tethering on to us that people don't understand, that we don't understand. And there's a lot of benefits that we don't use because we don't understand. But people who tether on to us and our identity, when they come over here, they understand and they use the benefits that we don't know that we have to their advantage. I'm being so for real for you. All right. So this is why it's important for the separation of identity, so we can see who's who. Now, from colonial era, we start getting into the mestizo era. Okay. So the mestizo era, colonial officials use Ladino more broadly to mean Spanish-speaking non-Indian. Many Afro-Indigenous people who didn't want to be labeled Negro or Indian called themselves Latinos to escape racial caste restrictions. That's another part of the story that people fail to understand. Some of our people didn't even want to be called neither Negro nor Indian, because y'all forgot during colonial times, the whole point was for us to hide who we was to escape persecution. So if I'm trying to escape persecution, why in the fuck am I going to tell you who I am? Right? If you got a warrant for the police, you going to get that nigga your real name? Fuck no. I'm just being real. Think like that. It's the same thing. It was damn near illegal to be Sephardic, Moor, and Indian at this time. Actually, it was. So a lot of our people became crypto Christians, crypto Catholics, right? Crypto Jews. You know, a lot of our people start calling themselves Latinos, mestizos, mulattoes. They start calling themselves this so they can escape racial caste restrictions. Because if you was a full-blood anything, or if you was half and half, oh shit, you feel me? So people don't understand that part of the story too, where our people used to, fake identity. But we wasn't faking Indian identity. We was faking other identities to hide the fact that we were Indians or Sephardics and Moors. So we would pretend to be Black Irish. Oh yeah, I got a live about that. For real, I got a whole live about the Black Irish. Because when the Black Irish start coming in, this is where our people start calling themselves Black Irish. Are you a Jew, Moor, Indian? No, I'm Irish. They would start saying they was Irish at a point in time to hide from racial restrictions. For real, I'm telling you some real shit. Are you Sephardic? No, I'm Dutch, nigga. What you talking about? For real. What's that in Florida, boy? Peace, peace. So understand that so many so-called, Afro-Indigenous people didn't want to be labeled Negro or Indian. So they called themselves Latinos to escape racial caste restrictions. Over generations, this became the accepted identity, especially in Central America, Guatemala, El Salvador. Right? Over generations, this became the accepted identity. You call yourself something over generations, it becomes your identity. So in modern times, right? Let's get to modern time real quick. So in modern times, right? In modern times, today, Latino in Guatemala and elsewhere just means Spanish-speaking person of mixed heritage, not indigenous. The older meaning, Latino meant Moors, Sephardics, and Afro descendants who was erased, right? Afro descendants not meaning the continent Africa, because remember, in colonial times, there was a Roman province of Sephardics and Moors. So Afro, the government in the world, the reason why they know who you are is because they labeled you with code words that lets them know who you are. So when they labeled you Afro-American, Afro-Caribbean, right? Afro-Latino, Afro-Mexican, When they put that Afro in front of you, that Afro was meaning al-free, meaning Africa, meaning the Roman province of northern Libya, which means Mauritanians, Moroccans, Algerians, Tunisians, even a little Somalians, Ethiopians, right? Iberian, Spanish, Portuguese, Sephardic. That's what it means. So this why they always know who you are. I'm just being real. That's how they know who you are. So when you say you're Afro-Indigenous, that just means that you are an indigenous American who has either Sephardic or Moorish ancestors. Like your host right here would be considered Afro-Indigenous because I have Shada ancestors and I have Moorish ancestors. I have Sephardic ancestors through my Irish side, and I have a little bit of Yamasee or Seminole ancestors from Florida. You see what I'm saying? So when you understand what you're reading, then you understand what you're reading. Literally using manifestations against us, claiming something till it stick. But it wasn't really using it against us in a way. It was just us hiding from persecution. So for generations, we called ourselves something else. And for generations, you know, who you really are goes dormant. And this new identity is who you are. But, you know. But the older meaning meant Moors, Sephardic, or Afro descendants. Ladino meant Afro descendants, Ladino, right? So while Jews preserved Ladino as their Judeo-Spanish language, while in Latin America, it became a colonial social category, right? So the timeline will look like this. Yeah, we still getting persecuted, facts. Right? We still getting persecuted, facts. So what's happening, lawful freedmen? So the timeline looks like this. Rome, Latin speaker, right? Iberia, Moors, Sephardism, speaking Latin or Spanish, Roman language because of Roman colonization from 1 AD to 700 AD. Okay, boom. The expulsion of the Moors or the Jews who were under the colonizing of Rome in the Roman province are Ladinos, right? Because they're Latinized Sephardic Jews or Moors. Okay. They get expelled from 1492. They come to colonial Americas, right? And become acculturated Africans or Jews and Moors or Ladinos. Okay. Ladino is another term for Afro, right? Because Africa, the only place that was called Africa at this time was the Roman province. So Sephardic Jews and Moors born inside of this province is called Africans. So your African slave trade is literally about Sephardic Jews and Moors. Okay? El Negro. So it turns into a casta system or Spanish speaking Afro-Indigenous equals Ladino kind of ordeal, right? Because the whole purpose is trying to hide the history, hide the identity. So we got to keep rebranding it and changing it. And this is what starts happening underneath the caste system. So at one point, they became Afro-Indigenous, which meant Latinos. In modern era, now it means non-Indigenous mestizos, right? So they just watered down the word pretty much. They watered down the word. They keep changing the definitions until it loses meaning. And that's what they do to a lot of words. They water it down until it loses meaning. Keep changing. All right. So So in short, Latinos were originally Moors and Sephardic Jews, peoples colonially rebranded as Africans or Negroes, right? Peoples who was colonially rebranded as Africans or Negroes. Over time, Ladino was weaponized to erase those origins and bury Moors, Jews, and Afro-Indigenous people under a single black or mestizo category. Boom. There you go, right there. That's why they want you to be African so bad. For real. That's why they want you to be African so bad. Because simply calling yourself African or black, you're erasing your own self. You're erasing your own identity when you call yourself black or African. African American. Black people, black culture, all that black shit. You're erasing yourself. You are descendants of indigenous Americans, Sephardic Jews, and Moors. You come from specific dynasty and royalty bloodlines. And you are just simply an American. That's it. You just simply an American. This is why they made you hate America. When you walk up to the average black person and you say America, 3 Ks come in their mind. For real. They wanted you to hate America. They wanted you to equate America with YT people and YT supremacy, so you will hate your own land, so you will stop identifying with it, so you will start to create your own reclassifications after a while. And that's what everybody did. And people still reclassifying themselves. Yeah, FBA, Shiamaru Republic, da-da-da-da. Nigga, we are Americans. Shut y'all asses up. I'm just being real. Yeah, we are just Americans, nigga. Not black Americans, not second-class citizen Americans, nigga. We are the original Americans, nigga. Sovereignly. Stop reclassifying yourself and go back to your roots. That's the only way you're gonna win this shit. Going back to your roots. Stop creating. Boy, look here. Niggas went so far left with the information. Niggas trying to create new tribes and shit. Nigga, go back to your old tribe. And I feel like a lot of people trying to create new tribes don't even know they old tribes for real. You don't know the history of it. That's why you're trying to create some new shit, because you don't know the old shit. And you refuse to learn the old shit. You probably can't comprehend. But if you don't know your history, you are bound to repeat that shit. And the simple fact that everybody rebranding themselves, you are repeating a part of history that I just broke down to you. You keep erasing yourself. Stop erasing yourself. You're doing it to yourself at this point. They ain't doing shit to you. These niggas is worried about, Epstein in Palestine right now. We the only ones reclassifying ourselves right now. These niggas focus on some other shit. That's how distracted we is. They ain't even worried about you. You doing it to yourself. You COINTELPRO yourself. They ain't doing shit. They peek in every now and then to see, are they woke yet? Or no, they still beefing with each other? Okay, cool. We can go ahead and continue some other shit. Well, you'd be surprised how many people waiting on you to wake up. For real. You'll be surprised. So, hey. So, Latinos were originally Moors and Sephardic Jews, people colonially rebranded as Africans or Negroes. That is your African diaspora, Sephardic and Moors. Over time, Ladino was weaponized to erase those origins and bury Moors, Jews, and Afro-Indigenous people under a single black or mestizo mulatto category. Shit, man, that's all good. It is all good. When you understand history, it all starts to make sense. Who the African is. Moors, Jews. You throw in the Afro-Indigenous, then Moors, Jews, Indians. Moors, Jews, and Indians have been fighting the same people that everybody is waking up to. Who dude with the little mustache warned y'all about. Ever since 1492, we've been fighting these same. Actually, we've been fighting these same people since they invaded Rome. But they didn't call themselves Z nations at this time. They didn't call themselves Jewish at this time. They called themselves Chazars. Anglo-Saxons. You know what I'm saying? They went by their nation. They went by their nation. They still go by their nations. The Anglo-Saxons Club of America. Everybody just now finding out, oh my God, America, Israel been controlling us. Man, they've been controlling us. Y'all late. They've been controlling us since 1898. 1920s. Who you think reclassified you? Go research everybody who reclassified the American Indians, the Sephardic Jews and Moors. They all have a Russian, Polish, German last name. Melville Herstovix, Frank Boas, Woodrow Wilson was a descendant of German. Man, Pete Gang. Yeah, I can't say it, but you know, yeah, you can say it like that. I just say Chazar, but yeah, it's pronounced that way. Dude with the funny mustache told y'all. Well, he didn't tell us, you know, I wasn't born yet, but he told them. You know what I'm saying? And what a lot of people don't know about dude with the funny mustache, he had Sephardic ancestry. And you can go research that for yourself. Dude with the funny mustache had Sephardic ancestry. This is why he knew what he knew. Ain't that some shit? Your soul food. Ah, yeah, they painted him as a villain. You got to remember who telling you the story about him. Of course, man, look. Yeah. Hey, 11:11 on the clock. So, you still speak your language. You still got your dialect. Believe it or not. You know what I'm saying? Like, real talk. You still got your dialect of your ancestors. You still got your Ebonics as your ancestors. You still got the culture of your ancestors. You still eat the same food of them too. Your soul food comes from this mixture. All right? Like, your ancestors, like, soul food. Where you think macaroni and cheese come from? That's an Iberian dish. Why you think you like pizza so much? Why you think the deep dish in Chicago was invented by a melanated woman? Boy, she tapped into them roots of the Iberian Peninsula, right? Why you think you like pasta, right? Why you think you like a lot of this stuff? Think about it. A lot of that stuff is Sephardic, Jew, kosher type of eating and stuff like that, right? Collard greens, mustard greens, black eyed peas, lima beans, right? Lima beans, ham hocks, neck bones, oxtails, seafood boils, gumbo. Y'all know our whole cultural dish that we like, man, and we fix all the time. That's literally the combination of the shared history. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, the spices alone. Yeah. So we need to learn Latin. If you want to learn Latin, I mean, if you want to learn Latin, you can. I mean, shit, I'm cool with my Ebonics. You know, I'm cool with my Ebonics, you know. Everybody trying to learn how to speak Ebonics now, so shit, Ebonics gonna be the language of the world. Everybody keep trying to be like us. They gonna ethnocide themselves. For real. Even the small hat people is creating a form of Ebonics too. They trying to be like us too. They got some shit called Jubonics. I researched that shit on Google. I seen it. I was like, Jubonics. Ah, boy, y'all boy lame as hell. I was like, y'all lame as hell. Them boys trying to mix Yiddish with Ebonics, man. Yeah, they trying to mix Yiddish with Ebonics, fam. I was like, hell no. But it's a reason for that, though. It's a reason why they tether on to us the hardest. A lot of people don't know. A lot of people be thinking it'd be the Africans that be tethering on to us the hardest. It's actually the little hat people. The little hat people is the biggest tethers. Now I'm being so for real. They the biggest tethers. I'm reading y'all history of these people literally following us from 1 AD. Listen, y'all. I'm literally read y'all history today. These folk been following us from 1 AD, colonizing, fighting us from 1 AD in Rome, for most part, all the way to 1492. From 1492 all the way to the 1800s. From the 1800s all the way to 2025, bruh. It's a reason why they want to be your managers when you in the industry. It's a reason why all the interviewers, Vlad TV, and all these niggas are small hat people. It's a reason why these niggas be so close to us. It's a reason why there's pictures of Martin Luther King with these niggas. You know what I'm saying? Boy, these the biggest tethers. The biggest tethers. I'm telling you some real shit. I can't tell y'all too much because we on TikTok, but you know, I'm giving y'all some gems, and hopefully y'all go do y'all research and dive down that rabbit hole. There's a book in the archives.org called The Jew and the Negro. Oh, Lord. That's all I'm going to tell y'all. There's a book in the archives called The Jew and the Negro. Go get it. Go read it. You'll start to see why they, man, look. It's because they know who you are, though. They trying to destiny swap with you. That's what the whole manifest destiny is about, right? Some of these biblical stories ain't like, a lot of these stories in the Bible is like, it's shit that's happening right now in your face. For the simple fact that these same people added 1,000 years by simply putting a 1 in front of the numbers. When you go back to the Tartarian days and World Fair buildings and all these other structures we had here, and you look closely, that is not a 1 in front of that 8. That is an I or a J, which means the error or whatever part of time they in type ordeal. So in reality, you wasn't in the 1800s. You was just in the 800s. You know what I'm saying? Give or take. But that's a whole nother rabbit hole that we're going to go down. But just understand that. So a lot of the stuff that they so-called prophecy is shit that's happening now. And it ain't like a prophecy or nothing. Most of the shit, they writing it as they go. when they talk about the psyop, but a lot of stuff our ancestors wrote and said was gonna happen. And a lot of stuff that the ancestors wrote said is happening, right? When you talk about the Deuteronomy, Sephardics and Moors already came back to Egypt in bondage. When you understand that old Egypt is in America, because the Old Testament was written in America. Since the Old Testament is written in America and the Old Testament come from the Torah, that means the Torah come from America, right? And when you understand that Egypt, Tennessee, and all of that, then you'll understand that when 1492 happened, that was Sephardic Jews who are biblically Hebrews and Israelites coming back to America inside of Egypt, because America's not Egypt, but Egypt is inside of America. So they came back, boom, inside ancient Egypt, got dropped off, boom, the Caribbeans and shit, boop. That's Deuteronomy that already happened. Niggas already came back. It be little stuff that fly over people's head. But they came back. The whole purpose was to protect the land, though, because America was the last land to get colonized, technically. That's why our slave story never happened in the 1400s. We wasn't slaves in 1492. We was fighting, and they was trying to enslave us. You know, few of us got captured, but they exiled us, meaning we left on our own. You know, of course we was forced, but we left. We didn't come to America as slaves. We came because we was exiled, right? So that whole enslaving shit, when they actually fully enslaved us, didn't start happening until the 1800s. When they fully started getting control of America and the resources and enslaving us and shit, that shit started happening like 1860, when the invasion of Ellis Island and Angel Island and Port Galveston started happening. When all the Polish and all the Russians and all the Germans start coming into America, that's when it popped off. That's when it popped off. So who was the Dutch? The original Dutch are Sephardics. The original Dutch are Sephardic Jews. The fake Dutch are Anglo-Saxons, which is, you know, the white tea ones. So so check this out, Florida. So this is why, if you ever pay attention or if you get time to research old Dutch masters, like old cigars, Dutchies, rolling papers and stuff like that. That dude is a Dutch dude, but he got a Moorish hat on. And at one point in time, he was dark skinned, but they made him white later on in history. It was too close to the truth. So, yeah. So they put it in our faces right there too, you know, because he's still dressed up in Sephardic gear, got a little Moorish hat, you know, little cap on and shit. So, yeah, they the Sephardics and Moors. Yeah, they just the Sephardics Moors that went out to Germany, right? Because when we talk about Roman colonization, right, here's the trickery with the Roman colonization. There's two Romes, right? You got regular Rome, Roman Empire, and you got Holy Roman Empire. So when we talk about Rome colonization of Sephardic Jews and Moors, we talking about that Rome that came from Germany, right? I think that one's called the Holy Roman Empire, right? Those are the Hellenistic people in history. They the ones that came and conquered regular Rome or Roman empires, right? And the original Romes would be Moors and Sephardics at that time, Sephardic Jews. You know, when you talk about Jerusalem and Judea and all of that type of stuff in those regions, that's what that would be. So they conquered that. And Holy Roman Empire is now kind of controlling shit, which would be Germanic people, you know, Russians and shit. Then they called themselves Black Dutch at one point in time. Yeah, they called themselves Black Dutch at one time. This is why we good at double Dutching too. Nah, I'm telling you, it be the smallest things in our culture that gives away the identity. For real. That's why I say when you know what you're looking at inside of our culture, you can see what I'm telling you now. This why people good at double dutching. And for those who don't know what double dutching is, go research it. Go research how long our sisters been double dutching their asses off. For real. We the best at double dutching. That comes from Dutch. Sephardic Jews. It's games that Sephardic children and Moorish children did in the ghettos. Because the first ghettos was created by the Roman colonization, right? When Rome colonized us, this is when the first ghetto was created. And they put all the Jews and the Moors in the ghetto. So you grew up in the ghetto. And ironically, they put us right back in the ghetto when they came over here, right? Peep game. So real shit, you know, Yahshua, all them people grew up in the ghetto. Moses, Moshe, all these people grew up in the ghetto. David, John, all these folk grew up in the ghetto. All the Sephardic Jews, Moors grew up in the ghetto. So when you in the ghetto, and y'all know, because most of us grew up in the ghetto, when you bored, you start creating shit. So some sisters probably grabbed 2 ropes and was like, swing this like this, swing that like that. You get in the middle and jump and try to dodge it. And then they just start doing it. And they start coming up with double dutch and they start saying little chants, little songs, and it became something cultural, something as simple as that, being bored as fuck in the ghetto. Real talk. This is why it's prophecy that the awakening will happen in the ghetto. And the ghetto children is God's children. I'm telling you some real shit. They know this. This is why the ghetto is the most targeted places. Peep game. Fellas, smoking Dutchies, rolling papers and shit. Yeah. That's culture. American Indians had the herb. The Dutch had the rolling papers. Right? Then they switched it up a little bit. Now the Indians put the Dutch on the game, the Sephardic Jews and them, right? Hey, I'm gonna put y'all up on game. I fuck with the papers, but check this out. Then what the Indians did, we brought out the tobacco leaf, man. We about to roll that motherfucker backwood. We about to let y'all know, you know what I'm saying? And they can roll the backwood. Boom, you got your relo. Bro, everything we do is something we have always been doing culturally, indigenously. This is why they call it ghetto. Our culture is ghetto culture. When you can read between the lines, just like how we just broke everything down today, and we read between the lines and we get an understanding, now you understand. They calling you who you are, but they calling you the derogatory term of who you are. And when you research all these derogatory terms, it all goes back to either Indians, Sephardics, or Moors. So even the derogatory terms is still telling you who you are. Peep gang. Call them niggas, short for nagas. Niggas. 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 Naga. Serpent worshippers, nigga? You calling us serpent worshippers? Yeah. You ain't know that your spirituality was serpent worship? Oh man, y'all gotta tap back into that Kundalini energy. Get you some sunlight, start sun gazing. You the reptilian, they the parasite. People got it all mixed up and all wrong. They calling parasites reptilians, and that ain't true. They're not reptilians. You are the reptilian. You just forgot that you're the reptilian. They're the parasites. And that's a fact. Go study reptiles. They're coated in melanin. They have open pineal glands. They are agile. They are fast. They like sunbathing. They like sun gazing. Some of them meditate. I think like the tortoises and certain breeds of snakes meditate. You'll catch a snake laying on his belly, soaking up the sun. You like, what the fuck? Real shit. That can't be them. Them niggas don't like sun. They can't be reptiles. They don't even like the sun, eh? That's you. The reptile is symbolic for Sophia wisdom. Sophia wisdom is divine feminine wisdom that connects you to the ethers and the monad, the source. Christ consciousness. That's what the reptilians stand for. That's why when you go to Peru, you see reptile statues. When you go to Egypt, you see serpents and snakes chiseled everywhere, right? When you go to Sudan, you see serpents and nagas chiseled everywhere. When you go to Japan, dragons, serpents. When you go to China, dragons, serpents. When you go to certain parts in Central America and stuff, right? Serpents, dragons. When you come up here to voodoo, serpents as well too. A lot of our figurines got serpents. And voodoo, the god, Dumbalot, is a serpent. Ironically, right? Half man, half serpent. Yeah. They tell you who you are. You just don't understand what they saying. Because you take everything to heart. Man, who the fuck you calling a nigga? All right, you take everything to heart. You too emotional that you can't think right now. The fuck, nigga? The fuck you mean the blacks, nigga? You know, you get all emotional and shit. They be playing on your frequency because they know that you are energy sensitive. So it's easy to get you up out your body. It's easy. Because we are energy sensitive people, it's easy to get you up out your body. It's because you don't know how to control your emotions yet. Nobody ever taught you. Yep, the Romans are the eagles. That's why the Mexican flag has the eagle holding the serpent. Yep. Rome ain't never failed. Man, Rome been over here the whole time. All that shit in the Middle East is a diversion, distraction. Them folks want America. Even Chucky worshiped Dumbledore. Yeah, he was doing voodoo the whole time. Charles Lee Ray. Charles Lee Ray is a Cajun name. You know what I'm saying? They be doing the root working. Hell yeah, man. But shit, if anybody got any questions, you can feel free to ask. We pretty much covered a nice little bit of the lesson today. They show us right in these movies too. Ah, yeah, they show us in these movies all day long. They show us, man, look, if you really want to know who you are and like in identity and shit, man, understand the purpose of whitewashing and go watch a lot of them history movies, you know, Viking movies and shit like that. A lot of that shit be telling you the truth. A lot of animes will tell you the truth. If you want to get into a Gnosticism, you want to check out animes. You want to get on quantum physics and molecular level stuff, check out sci-fi movies and stuff like that. TV shows like The Flash. Yeah, they put all this, man, they put all that stuff in our face. I'm just curious about the Dutch thing, though. What's up about the Dutch? Ah, shit, hold on, I didn't mean to do that. My bad. Okay, I got you. I got you. Yeah, I DM you after the live. So you showed me a lot I didn't know. Ah, yeah. Most of the time they talking about the same people and hit. So that's the whole confusion when they generalize people. But you know, there's a lot of history books that talks about, you know, Sephardic Jews. It gets biblical. So a lot of our people stray away from that information. But in order to understand Sephardic Jew history, you gotta understand biblical history, right? You gotta understand the 12 tribes. You gotta understand the Judah. You gotta understand the Benjamin, the Levi. You gotta understand who Afro is, who Salah is, Eber. You know what I'm saying? You gotta understand just that whole realm. But inside that whole realm, you would get the Sephardic Jew history, which is part of us, you know, your history, as being so-called descendants of, you know, Hebrews and Israelites. That's not far-fetched. That's true. You know, we just put it together. You know, to understand the Moors, you pretty much got to understand Berber history, Tuareg, right? And a lot of Moorish history will have an Arab face on it, of course. You know what I'm saying? Because they tried to whitewash, you know, the Moors. That's why people think Moors and Arabs is the same people. But no, the Arabs was the conquerors who brought Islam over, because Islam started off like a Mongolian religion or some shit like that, right? When you go look at pictures of there's certain pictures of the Prophet of Muhammad, you know, he got a Mongolian face and shit, you know, some of them he don't, but don't nobody really know what he looked like type ordeal. But that Islam came from around like Mongolian, Turkish religion, and they came and conquered and turned Moors into, or Berbers into Muslims. So when they say Moors, or originally they're talking about Berbers and Tuaregs, but they're Berbers and Tuaregs who are Islamic because of the conquering that happened in the 700s. So, you know, they scattered the history to cause a confusion. But this is why I always say that a lot of people got the puzzle pieces to the bigger picture. They just too busy arguing over who's what's what. You know what I'm saying? They too busy arguing over shit instead of trying to put the puzzle piece together. I ain't no African. Nigga, we are Africans. What the fuck? Nigga don't even know what African meant in the 1600s. Most people say African, everybody gets some fucked up picture about Africa or Africans pop up in their mind and shit. I hate to be you know, brutally honest, but that's facts. When people hear Africa or Africans, you get some fucked up picture in your mind because you've been programmed like that. Man, I ain't no African, nigga. I'm an American. Yeah, that could be true. But two truths could exist at the same time. Because when a person say African, they might be talking about more likely Moors, Sephardic Jews. Because they the only people that's called Africans at this time. And we talking about African slave trades and African diasporas, colonial Africans, then you're literally talking about Sephardic Jews and Moors. So like shit. And a lot of these people intermingle with American Indians who is of copper color, dark skinness, created maroon communities, fought in revolutions and revolts, had seats on Congress and built Black Wall Streets together and all this type of stuff. We've been living amongst each other for centuries, 500 and 600 years, 700 years. You really think that everybody pure? Right? I mean, if we talking in the sense of nationality and this type of history, right? Y'all already know my standpoints on the whole pure thing, right? Because I know that the Sephardics and Moors come from America anyways. So, I mean, yeah, technically you're more pure than you think. But since people talking about colonial times and labels and shit, then label-wise, you're mixed. If we're talking about labels, label-wise, you're mixed. In reality, you're more pure. This is why your melanin is worth 600 per gram. Because you're more pure than you think. Why? Sephardics, Moors, Indians, same damn people. The Sephardics and the Moors are Indians that just left America and spread civilization around the globe, 360 degrees. 3 plus 6 is 9, equals completion. Alchemy, cosmology, astrology, inventions, taking primitive people out of the dark ages and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? Architecture, agriculture, spreading corn to Africa and shit like that. Like all that was Sephardic Jews and Moors, aka Indians who left America to spread civilization around the world. That's a fact. So it's the same people. They just came back home in 1492 because they ass got deported or exiled. That's it. That's it. That's it. That's literally it. So people be arguing about the same people. I'm saying that ancient American. Peace, peace. So you heard a lot of bad stuff about those Moors, though. That's because the bad stuff you heard about Moors aren't really Moors. Those was Turks. Right? Anytime you hear some bad shit in history, they're going to call Turks or Muslims Moors as well, too. But those are Turks. Right? Niggas from Europe on that side. So those ain't the same. The word Moor is just a descriptive term, right? It just means Negro or black, right? So those was just black Turks who was Muslim, who was invading. So they called them Moors. Versus the other Moors, who is still black and Negro, right? Because Moor is synonymous with the word black and Negro, right? So the same Moors on this end who are Berbers and Tuaregs and Sephardics. So this is why I like to be specific when I talk about this type of history. Because if you don't be specific of who's who, it's going to confuse you. You know what I'm saying? So why did they get exiled though? They got exiled. They got exiled because they didn't want to convert over to Christianity, Catholicism. They didn't want to bow down to the church, the Vatican, the little hat people. So they went to war. Fortunately, we lost the war. So because we lost, we got kicked out. We got exiled. We taking over your land. Y'all got X amount of days to get up out of here. So they got, we got exiled. So the only place that we could come back home to was America. So we came back home to America. Mm-hmm. They changed the faces of all our indigenous groups. Yeah, they did. They changed the faces of all the indigenous groups. So now, because the original American Indians kind of got conquered, now you get the face of an Athabascan as an Indian. Because the original Moors and Sephardic Jews got conquered, now you get the face of an Arab and a small hat person as an Arab and a Jew. You know what I'm saying? That's when they start doing all that shit. When in reality, the Native American, the little hat person, and the Arab are genetically the same people. They genetically the same people. Why? Because Native American and Siberian is a sub-ethnic group of an Russian. Most little hat people are Russian, right? Poland, Russia, Slavic people. Slavs is what they are. They're Slavic people. Peep gang. They're the same people. This is why you can go on Google and pull up pictures of certain Native Americans waving a Nazi flag. But we ain't gonna go too deep on that. We on TikTok. Said they been exiled everywhere they been. Who? The little hat people? What about the Amish? The Amish is the same people. The Amish is the same people. The Amish, the Mormons, natives, small hat people, Anglo-Saxons, Turks, Armenians, Georgians, Caucasians. They all literally genetically the same people. If we was talking in biblical times, I would say that they come from the tribe of Japhet or Gog and Magog. You know, for people who's into that, to get an understanding. What's that in Orange Mound? Peace. The Moors. So the Moors didn't really get conquered out of everywhere. Not until later on, right? It was like a slow ethnocide, right? So the first place would be the Iberia. If we can take over the home base or one of the main empire headquarters, then the rest will start to fall. So once they took over the Iberia in North Africa, you know, through the Roman identity from 100 to 600, then some of them started getting pushed to like France, you know, small bits and pieces, right? Some of them even came to America, right? Canada and shit like that a little bit. It wasn't a lot, but just a little bit. This damn airplane, bro. Well, that was weird. A helicopter flying low as hell. This nigga waved at me and shit. For real, I ain't playing no game. The helicopter flew low as hell and he waved at me. That shit crazy. But I forgot where I was at. So they conquered the Iberias, which was one of the major headquarters of the empire. We take that over, the other parts of the empire would start to fall. So once they took that over, then they start conquering South France. They start conquering Erie, or Ireland, as you call it. They started conquering the Dutch, the Swedes. You know, the Dutch is just German. The Dutch, they just your German Moors and Sephardics. And they just start, you know what I'm saying? Because Sephardics and Moors was scattered to the four corners of the earth, biblically. And that is true, right? A lot of our brothers and sisters is scattered in the four corners of the earth. So these people just came out and just started conquering four corners of the earth, which is where all of our people went. And it's just these identities that they was that just let you know the area they was in, right? So originally, when you talk about Dutch, you're talking about German, Sephardic Jews and Moors, right? You talk about the Iberia, you talk about Spanish and Portuguese and Italian and Sicily, Sephardic Jews and Moors, and et cetera, et cetera. Exactly. And then they assume the identity, right? And then they assume the identity. Boy probably tapped your live, but hey, look, I sound like I was in there with him. Man, it wouldn't even surprise me. He teaching them too much. He's teaching them too much, man. Look, for real though. But it's real shit. We're gonna get this understanding. That shit happen every day. So they assume the identities. Once they conquer the land masses where all of us was at, you know, from the Americas to Asia to the parts of Europe, once they conquer all the four corners, then they start driving us out. And they start, but here's the major point. All of the Sephardic Jews and Moors that they drove out from the other side of the world, they brought them here in America. They brought them back here in America. Real shit. They brought them back here in America. Right? Some went to the Pacific Islands with the Negritos. You know, when you talk about the Filipino Moros, right? So some of our brothers and sisters went back to the Philippines. Some of our brothers and sisters went to Papua New Guinea. Some of our people went Hawaii, Samoa Islands with the Maori tribe and all of that. So, and the African diaspora, but now we know what the African diaspora is. So a lot of us just got pushed back into the Indies, right? India Superior, because remember, this is still India Superior at this time. So they just pushed the Indians back into India of India Superior, which is here. So some of our brothers and sisters ended back up in the Pacifics. Some of our brothers and sisters came through the Atlantic. Some of them went back to Brazil, Caribbeans, Suriname, Yucatan, Mexico, Florida, love Florida at this time, etc., etc. Canada, when you talk about the Black Canadians up there, our brothers and sisters up there who are the Black Canadians originally, they just pushed us all back in America. But they pushed us back in America for a reason, though. You're seeing that reason play out right now in your face. What's happening, D? Peace. Nah, for real. They pushed all of us back into America and India Superior for a reason. And that reason is unfolding in your face. So, before we wrap it up, I just wanted to show y'all. Yep, the same Black Canadians that invented hockey. Yep, exactly. So, when we talk, it's just repetition, the father of learning. So when we talk about Africans, understand that we are talking about the northern part of this landmass. And its inhabitants look like this. And you went to school with people that look like this. You have people inside your family that look like this. You done ran across people that look like this, yada, yada, yada. So we're talking about Sephardic Jews and Moors, right? And a lot of our brothers and sisters still exist over there today, chilling. Most of them is over here, chilling. But understand the people that they talking about, because they're not talking about random Africans like mainstream wants you to think. Because like we learned in colonial period, Africa wasn't a continent. It was a Roman province, right? And a Roman province was northern part of that landmass that stretched all the way up to the Iberia. And these are the people that inhabit that landmass. They still there today. My little cousin looked like the second dude on the left from the middle. Inside the blue, the baby blue. Now, zoom in on this pic up here. This is your Afro tribe, Sephardics, Jews, and Moors. Your Mauritanians. Right? These is your Mauritanians, your Africans. So when you talk about African slave trade in colonial times, understand that there was no continent called Africa. You are talking about a Roman province. that inhabit Sephardic Jews and Moors. Them same people came to South Carolina. Here we go again. The same people came to South Carolina. This guy right here in the middle, he got a whole book that he written telling you about his whole experience. It's called the Muslim slave trade. Right? Moors, right? Muslim slave trade. He got a whole book. He tell you his whole experience. Look at him. So understand, you talking about a specific group of people when you talk about Africans, right? These people down here. Now you got old girl right here with her kids. Hold on, I'm trying to get it right there. Right? You got old girl right here with her kids. She look like somebody auntie. And you talking about specific people. You got old boy right here with the part in the middle of his head. He come from the Ben Ali family lineage of Sephardic Jews and Moors that settled in South Carolina in the 1700s. He come from the Ben Ali family. Look at him. He cleaned them on up, shaved them good, put a little bow tie on them and shit. Looking like he ready to sell some bean pies out here in these streets. But you can't tell me that he can't blend in with no American Indian. You can't tell me he can't blend in with no American Indian. But that's the story that we've always been reading. We just read that story today, that a lot of Sephardic Jews and Moors blended in with the Indians to hide from persecution. But the crazy thing is the Moors, the Sephardic Jews, and the Indians didn't even want to be classified as Negro or Indian. So they called themselves mulattoes, mestizos, and Latinos and shit like that to hide from persecution. Hey, peep game. And they all fought on the Confederate with the American Indians. So these are free people of color. Yes, these would be free people of color, depending on the time frame. Depending on the time frame. Hold on. So the reason why I say depending on the time frame, if it's earlier in colonial history, around 1700s and stuff like that, there'll be free white persons, right? When they first get here, then they'll be reclassified to free people of color with the American Indians, who's also called free people of color. So they will be put inside the category in the box with us. And then from there, Sephardic Jews, Moors, and Indians get reclassified together. You know, from free people of color to Negro to black to Afro-American, African-American. Then, you know, we all get classified together until they just call us black people, black community, and black culture. Is this sidetracking to ask who the heck is Prester John and is he from here? Prester John leads into the Inca history. We'll have to study Inca history for Prester John, but stories are, you know, there are stories that say Prester John was one of the Incan royalty from down here, and he's called something else. Some say that Prester John is an Israelite or a Sephardic Jew. I say two truths can exist at the same time. He was both. Since we know that Sephardic Jews come from America, especially South America, when you talk about Incas, you know, all these mother cultures that gave birth to all these other tribes of people. But Prester John's story I think it takes place in like Peru or something, if I'm not mistaken. But nah, it's not actually sidetracking. It's actually on point with colonial times too. So we can cover Prester John one time, probably tomorrow. Give me time to get all my books that got them in there and get my screenshots so we can talk about Prester John tomorrow. Saying it, run girl, peace, peace. Said persecution of what? Religious persecution. Religious persecution. That's the persecution. Religious persecution or persecution of being the children of God. Right? Being the children that is closest to the monad in pure consciousness and who has a soul. Right? So it was persecution of spirituality, persecution of those who believe in mystics and Gnosticism, hoodoo, voodoo, Santeria, spirituality, who believe in nature, who believe in just consciousness, the things that we believe in. We get persecuted for it, right? They catch you meditating, sun gazing, witchcraft, burn them at the stake, all that type of shit. You know what I'm saying? So we was hiding from being persecuted for being, being us. So some of our ancestors hid a lot of our spirituality inside the black churches. And some ancestors hid the spirituality in other things. But most of the time, you are only a Christian because your people was pretending to be Christians to hide from persecution. The problem is you've been pretending to be a Christian for so long that you forgot that you was just pretending in the first place. And your ancestors kind of forgot to tell you that. But the good thing about it is when you wake up, you get back into your mysticism, right? Your spirituality. You're learning about quantum physics and parallel universes and vibrations and frequencies and meditations and herbal healings and one with universe and nature and everything like that. You get back into your teachings that was actually embedded inside your genes because we have a soul, we have the knowledge of good and evil, and we have the knowledge of the universe technically when you tap in, right? And the key thing is being grounded in one with the universe. You're swimming in ether, free energy. That's exactly what we got to go back to, facts. That's why you can't call yourself an Indian or a Sephardic Jew or Moor if you ain't even tapping into spirituality, because it's deeper than just calling yourself a name and talking about give us some money and reparations. It's deeper than all that, right? These people don't care about money. They print the money. They not doing this stuff to you for the money. They not going to war for the money. They print money. They don't care about that. They doing it for the sole purpose that they are parasites who are inhabiting and leeching off the earth, and they have to corrupt everything that they touch in order for them to remain in power. So they gonna keep you in a false illusion reality that is grounded in fear, so you don't fight back like you used to do. You know what I'm saying? So it's deeper than just saying that you're an Indian and a Moor and Jew and getting on the corner and screaming Bible verses at people and shit. It's deeper than all that. It's some real esoteric shit going on right now in everybody's faces. And people's too busy arguing. I don't know all this shit, but I don't even know what the fuck people arguing about nowadays, bro. I'm so goddamn lost. Real, I don't even know what people arguing about. No, I'm lost, bro. I was like, what the fuck is the topic? But we just got to tap back into our spirituality at the end of the day. Those who get it, get it. Those who don't, won't. Don't cast your pearls to the swine, and don't waste your time talking to a brick wall. If you've been arguing with the same people for 2 and 3 years about the same shit, obviously these niggas ain't gonna get it. Let them be and teach people who want to learn the information. Because you're wasting your time and your God's gift of enlightenment by trying to force people who don't want to see the truth to see something that is not meant for them to see. You got to let those people be. And you got to move on. Stop arguing with Choctaw. Stop arguing with Black First. Stop arguing with 05. Stop arguing with all these motherfuckers who clearly don't give a shit. And you ain't going to change their mind. A lot of these people ain't our people. Right? Some of these people know this shit. And they not our people. Our people understands knowledge, information. Our people will be open to the information. Most of us will accept the information because it starts from a feeling in the soul. This is what connects all of us in the first place. So you really don't have to force nobody into the information. Your people will hear it and they will wake up. Right? Real shit. Those with eyes will see, those with ears will hear. If it's meant for them, it will be. If it's not, then obviously it ain't meant to be. That's all I'm saying. Stop wasting your time. We got some bigger shit to do. Bro, these niggas is trying to make a 50 state of Israel around this motherfucker, and we still arguing about some shit. Man, look, bro. Y'all gonna look up. Los gonna be deep off in the woods of America somewhere with a full beard, going back to my primitive roots with the Papua New Guineans. I ain't playing with y'all. Shit hit the fan too bad, but I'm gonna be with the Papua New Guineans, nigga. You gonna find I'm be damn Los. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna be out there with my nigga. It's only the safe place out here, man. Them niggas don't come out here like that, bro. Hey, shit. For real. I ain't playing. You better wake up. It's either we gonna fight or I'm gonna be kicking it with the Andaman Islanders and shit in the jungles, isolated until coast is clear. I ain't out for real. Strength is deeper in numbers. Peace, Swarthy. This why we need. I'm gonna tell y'all the people we need to get through to though. One of the main peoples we need to get through is the Afro-Mexicans. For real. The Afro-Mexicans is the missing puzzle piece. Because we already got the Caribbeans, our brothers and sisters. Most of us on the mainland already know. The Afro-Mexicans is the next people to wake up. Watch what I tell you. Because us and the Afro-Mexican the same people. We're the same people. So we got brothers and sisters out there we need to reach. Why you think they keep them isolated from everybody? P gang. But they gonna be the next ones to wake up. Watch what I tell you. Caribbeans already, us and the Caribbeans already been woke from day one. Our brothers in the Yucatan and the Pacifics. Once those two puzzle pieces is put into play, we good. We good, but we got to keep on teaching and reaching people though. So, but with that being said though, man, if nobody got no questions, anybody want to tap in, y'all can. But if not, I'm gonna go ahead and shut it down, get me something to eat. Yeah, the Samoans. The Samoans are brothers and sisters too. They definitely are brothers and sisters. But with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and shut it down for a minute, get me something to eat. Y'all enjoy the rest of y'all day, man. I'll see y'all tomorrow morning. It'll probably be first thing in the morning to get it out the way. 8 o'clock East Coast time, if y'all could wake up that early on Saturday, just so we can probably be done by lunch. So y'all enjoy the rest of y'all day. I might come back on later on today, probably about 9-10 o'clock. It's Friday, so it'll be a little bit later. You know, everybody be up anyway, or I might be a guest on somebody's panel. You never know. But y'all enjoy y'all day. Vibrate high, peace, prosperity, abundance, gratefulness, gratitude, and appreciativeness. Practice serenity. Control what you can control. Let go of what you can't control. And have the wisdom, know the difference, so you can balance out all karma in your life, whether it's good or bad. And also teach the kids what you didn't know, because this whole matrix targets the kids with the psyop while they're young. So it's your job as a parent and a guardian first, to teach your kids the matrix and this information of thyself. And with that being said, I'm gonna enjoy it. Holler at y'all later. And if you want to grab a copy of the book, hit the link in the bio. If you haven't grabbed your copy, Reclaiming Our Consciousness Part 2 is out. Link in the bio. I'm gonna holler at y'all.